Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Project Management Paradise podcast, your passport to project success. I'm your host today, Pamela Sinclair, and I am also joined today by Adele Dickman. Her and I have been working together for the last several months, and so I'm just going to go ahead and let her introduce herself.
Yeah. G'day, welcome to the podcast today. I'm joining from Brisbane in Queensland, Australia. My name's Adele Dickman. I'm the Associate Director for the Digital Portfolio Management Office here at QUT. I'm a software engineer by trade, but over my career so far have kind of worked everywhere in the software delivery lifecycle, and that's how I've ended up here in the PMO.
Amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about your business background? I know you just gave a little brief overview on yourself, but I know that you kind of accidentally ended up in portfolio management, and I'm sure the audience would love to hear that story.
Sure. I graduated with a Bachelor of Software Engineering in Computing Science from QUT back in the day, and it led me to, as a graduate position, working with the largest telco here in Australia. And I started very much in back of house operations, hands-on, supporting right in the back end of software and database systems. And from that got interested in how applications work and how systems and solutions work. So from that, I kind of worked through all the aspects of that software delivery lifecycle. So, taking something on that wasn't really architected and designed particularly well. So then took a step into architecting and designing things, and then realized that there was a whole business change component to that. So, kind of got to the point where eventually I was a PM by accident. And that gave me a great opportunity to get to know how the telco business worked and a large operations 24/7 function worked. Then with that understanding, was able to get involved in some work that was negotiating one of the biggest transformative changes to the telco industry in Australia when the NBN came along. And when that deal was done, I ended up in the position where I was implementing that. So I was kind of leveraging all of the things I'd done previously, and amongst the functions I had a portfolio. Well, we called it a program management office back then, but delivering that large piece of work. And I loved that challenge. But what I liked the most about it was I got to come up with something, put it in place, run it, and then shut it down over the lifespan of the function. So that got me to the point where I was pretty exhausted, and took a gap year at the end of that, and then spent a little bit of time working for a media telco organisation here in Australia. And then the opportunity at QUT came along, and even though it's a little bit outside of my wheelhouse, what attracted me to that was the transformative change opportunity. I get bored fairly easily, and so I like things that are challenging and new and different, and this is definitely one of those.
Yes, it is. And I will say that the transformative change that has happened with the Cora project that I have seen has been handled very, very well. So even though you got into this accidentally, it's, challenge accepted on your part, and you've definitely done a great job. But I just love that story, because I feel like, even though, myself included, doesn't matter what I graduated in, like it's just the progression path of your career and mine too, that has both kind of accidentally landed us in project management.
In technology.
Technology
But also it's something I often say, particularly to women who are looking at technology or STEM as a career. Just because you start there, you don't have to finish there. And there are so many different facets and aspects. People think software engineering is sitting in a dark room with lots of coffee, and it's just it's the understanding, it's the thought process, it's the way you learn to interact with the world around you. And if you happen to have people skills as well, boy, that's a good combination, because like most technical disciplines where you spend a lot of time on your own and working on your own, when you start to get into those positions where you have to talk to people and get requirements from people and understand how their business works. And so if you happen to be somebody who has an interest in technical stuff but the people skills, the world's your oyster when you understand the technical stuff and you can actually talk about it and articulate it and interact with people around you. You get to be very valuable with that skill set. So big plug for women in technology, just by the way.
Amen. Amen to that. Well, given that QUT, Queensland University of Technology, is based in Australia, can you explain to our international audience what the Queensland University of Technology is doing with project management?
Yeah, sure. So I've done both my undergrad and postgrad here at QUT, so I am a big fan and an alumni. But QUT is one of Queensland University of Technology, QUT, it's an Australian thing, we shorten everything, you'll get used to me. We're one of the big three universities in the Greater Brisbane area, and we are one of the world-class universities in Australia. We have about 50,000 students, and the focus of the university is being the university for the real world. So we focus on real world infrastructure, learning and teaching, and graduating our students with the skills to thrive and survive in the world as it changes and transforms around them. So one of the things that QUT is in the middle of is a fairly significant digital transformation, which was kind of what attracted me to this role when I joined about this time last year. The university has a recently launched connection strategy, and underpinning that a digital strategy as well. And the intent behind the digital transformation portfolio that I oversee is that the university is looking to be deliberately identifying, selecting, and delivering those initiatives that will unlock the benefits and the capabilities for the university to meet its ambitious goals around its connections strategy. So, connections is all about transforming the way we deliver learning and teaching and the way our researchers work. And it's started off with addressing some of the tech debt and the risks that the university had over the last couple of years of potentially underinvestment, like most educational institutions through COVID, I guess. But now we're in that really exciting position, and that's kind of where Cora as a PPM tool came in, because we were looking for not just a traditional project program management tool, but something that unlocked our ability to be transparent and inclusive across the university with our sponsors and stakeholders around selecting the right things at the right time that will unlock the right benefits to get the university where it needs to go, because the transformation is a fairly significant capital investment for the university, so they need to see the value of it.
Yeah, and you were looking for that single source of truth. You didn't
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
want to have some data in one location and some data in another location and have to merge it into a spreadsheet to report back.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the way, the way the data is accessible to our sponsor community, who are busy, lecturers, senior academics, executive staff, and one of the key things that attracted us to the Cora portfolio management tool was the ability to slice and dice the way it presents the data. So for our project community who want to see things like detailed PPM style information, they can, but that same information can be presented in a slightly different way, more appropriate to our executive audience or our decision makers or our financial teams. And it's the same data, and there's very little effort involved once you do the initial configuration. They can see the same information in the way that is meaningful to them, and we really like that about the tool.
Right, different dashboard views or different
Yeah.
one-click access to portals, that kind of thing that just really delivers exactly what they're looking for all out of one tool.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing that we liked about it, obviously, with an eye to security, is it connects to our Active Directory authentication system. So no individual username and passwords, which is kind of important in this day and age.
Yeah, it is. And having single sign on everything is just kind of very streamlined.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So on a monthly basis, what is the volume of programs and projects that you're handling at QUT?
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, we've got about 50 individual initiatives on the go. We group them either as individual projects of varying shapes and sizes. We have a couple of programs that the Cora tool is actually enabling us to provide oversight and transparency in a program sense that we haven't been able to do before. And it makes more sense to our project and program community to have some of those initiatives grouped as programs, which has been a real revelation and given us some extra levers this year to help move things along. But also we have been able to sort of categorize the investments into the various portfolios that represent our connection strategy objectives and our client groups. So, servicing our education and research customers, as well as servicing our enabling services and our student and stakeholder teams. So the size of the investment is sort of a 7-8 figure investment annually at the moment. And so sitting in behind the 50 or so programs, we've got a staff of about 120, 130 people who will either timesheet or actively use the Cora tool in the background, and that has scaled up super quickly. I guess we'll get to that when we talk implementation in a bit.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned the term slice and dice, you know,
Yeah.
looking at your benefits and strategies from several different angles to make sure that you're hitting all your targets. And then you also mentioned the portfolio level, which is kind of the roll up of all your projects. So you can kind of see across the board, again, in that one tool, like where you are across your portfolio, as well as
Yeah.
slicing and dicing across your benefits and strategies, which is really neat.
Yeah, so the key there is that we can demonstrate to the university that we are investing in the right portfolios to get the right results. So in addition to that sort of direct line up between a benefit and a strategy and an enabler, we can also do the reporting in the way that says, learning and teaching and research is core business for the university, and our investment profile. Here is the representation that shows you that our investment profile is appropriate to a university that is focused around education and research and learning and teaching for our community. So again, we like that. The fact that we can get that with the press of a button or a small configuration change in the way we display, rather than having to spend hours creating bespoke PowerPoints and cutting and pasting, and which is kind of where we were last year.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad that Cora is kind of filling that gap.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you share some examples of the types of projects that you're
Yeah, sure.
currently implementing right now?
Yeah, so one of our flagship programs that has been running for a while now, but is really kicking some goals, is called our Digital Connections program, and it has a number of individual kind of iterative style initiatives sitting underneath it. The program manager has put a really robust delivery methodology in behind that program, where the program manager works with the various areas of the business to find and identify manual processes that are causing pain for our students. And that's just not just current students, that's prospective students as well as our alumni, because we like to keep in touch with them, but also with our staff communities. So they find these process pain points, or as is process areas that are not working as well as, or delivering the results as well as the business group would like. And then they focus on that process re-engineering piece, and then incorporate digital capability into underpinning that process. So at the moment, they're transitioning things like prospective students and student admission processes, but they've also done alumni and some internal processes into a CRM solution. So some of the great results that are being seen in that program is cutting processes down by half, improving our ability to communicate with our students, targeted communications, being able to keep records of when somebody has spoken to a prospective student on social, and then when that student then reaches out to us again, we have that information at hand and we can answer really quickly. So those are the kind of things that we're really seeing the benefit out of investment in the digital transformation. It's unlocking our business's ability to serve our customer stakeholder group, our students, and also giving our staff the tools that they need to be able to be more efficient and effective in bringing those students in, so that they can experience our great learning and teaching and research environment.
All right. So before implementing Cora PPM, what challenges did your project teams face?
Yeah, so we had a PPM solution that was very transactional. So it supported our project and program community, but it was very limited in terms of the ask of what the university had around the digital investment and ability to manage that portfolio transparency. So one of the key things that our old tool set struggled to be able to do was to link transparently the expected benefits and evolving emerging costs associated with our investment decision making. So, the question that we couldn't answer using our previous tool set was, if we invest in this particular initiative, what's the return on investment? And if we do it now, when do we expect that return on investment, or should we do it later? And trying to figure out all of those moving pieces took a very significant amount of manual work from my predecessor and the team here in the portfolio office. So that was probably the biggest issue, but then closely followed by the fact that we just didn't have a reporting capability. The data was there in the tool, but because nobody could access it and nobody could leverage that for decision making or for transparency. Even our project and program managers were finding it reasonably pointless, I guess, from the feedback I had when I arrived, to actually update the tool, because like it goes nowhere, nobody looks at it, nobody uses it. I'm managing offline in my spreadsheet, I'm managing offline in my project schedule, and I'm managing offline with my portfolio. So while it's very important to keep up your project discipline and keep those tools and records updated, unless you actually see the value in doing so, we're all human. Nobody is actually going to do it if you don't see value in it. And the big change with the pivot to the Cora solution already in the couple of months we've been up and running in it is it's become very clear to our project and program community that people are looking at their data and people are making decisions based on what they are reporting. And so our compliance with things like status updates and our monthly cadence ask around closing out costs and being transparent with the life cycle of benefits and risks and issues is already a lot better than we had seen last year. And the benefit for us as a PMO is that we're achieving that outcome with a lot less effort from the PMO, and we've actually been able to reduce our headcount a lot quicker than we had expected, because the people who were functioning in the PMO supporting our previous tool set and supporting our PMs to actually be able to use our previous tool set, that was a bit of a soul destroying job. I mean, if I'm honest, I know they didn't enjoy it because they were literally doing the same things with the same PMs every couple of weeks. And, that's the definition of insanity. We had to help change and transform that function. So from a PMO perspective, that has been a significant benefit to us in switching the way we do and support our community with the PPM toolset we've got.
Nice. And then why did you end up selecting Cora, given all these problems that you identified? What did Cora offer to kind of fill some of those gaps?
Yeah, so primarily it would have been the portfolio management capability, and I've talked a little bit about that before, but the reporting, the ability to leverage the data that we have for decision making and be transparent with our investment oversight and IT governance community around what decisions we're making, why we're making them, and being able to demonstrate that we actually have a good basis of data to make the projections we're making and make the investment decisions we're making. As a tool, it provided a really simple balance between that out-of-the-box capability and customization. Our previous PPM tool was eminently customizable, but it gave us almost too much choice. And so, when you're in an environment where you get to choose absolutely everything, then you get to the point where you're just stagnated because you just don't,
like
you're spoiled for choice. But also maintaining it once you've made those changes then becomes a huge overhead, and you rely a lot on inherent knowledge and vendor capability, and that bit us, I think, a little bit because we had a high turnover of people over the 12 months before I came in. So that was probably the two biggies, but also with my background and the background of the PM who has been working on this with me, we really appreciated the implementation approach and support that Cora offered with the tool. And, the whole kind of get in, have a look, play with it, and then see how it meets your needs was really useful to us. We had the option or opportunity to have a proof of concept, and as if I put my customer hat on here, the ability to have a proof of concept and play with it gave us the confidence that it's not just the sales talk. It actually is followed through by a product that actually does what was being sold to us, and that really gave us the ability to get a bit of a fast start on how we might implement this and how quickly we might be able to do it, and where our risks were and where our opportunities were, and the ability to kind of tweak our approach before we committed and signed on the dotted line, which we really appreciated. And the nerd in me really likes the bulk import and edit capabilities. I have, much to my PM's disgust, because yes, I am an executive these days, but I have been in the background doing a lot of the hands-on transitioning for our PMs and using the bulk import capability and writing macros, and regressing 20 years of my career to being in the dark room with lots of coffee and loving it. So from a personal perspective, I really like that bulk import edit capability. It also future-proofs us a lot, because if PMs have a large risk workshop or a large benefits workshop and they want to pull stuff in, it's very easy to do. Our last tool was very much cut, paste for hours to get stuff in.
Yeah, I mean, I have a few things just to add to that. The importing, also allowed your users to have all their historic data. So
Yeah,
they're,
brought
that
across.
that adds to that single source of truth. They're not
Mm.
going back to their old spreadsheet. We didn't have to do manual data entry. We were able to get it all in project by project. And I know this because I would leave being on site and we would have 16 projects in, and I would come back the next day and we had 22 projects in, which meant Estelle was working late that night. And it was much
Yes.
appreciated.
That's
But
also probably a point worth making too. So the tool as a something you're rolling out was so easy when our PM community started to twig to just the benefit it would give them and how much opportunity it was. And they started beating our collective doors down to say, get me over, get me in, get me up and running. Yes, there was a little bit of effort in the background, but compared to what we thought it was going to be before we actually understood how the process worked. And as you say, we were able to we literally have got about, I think it's about 86% of our active projects are now up and running in Cora in 3 months. And when we had laid this out last year, we were thinking, 6 months at least. And we've had projects come over and PMs come over who we knew were very change resistant and were hesitant to, transition while their project's in mid-delivery phase. And they've just taken to it like ducks to water, if I can use that analogy. And that is a testament to the product and its ease of use and ability to meet what its customers need is in the background.
Yeah, and I'm again just a little biased because I was so involved in your implementation, but your team has really hit the ground running with it, and we really, from a project implementation standpoint, we really tried to make this as intuitive as possible. And I think that kind of attributes to the snowball effect that you're seeing where people are wanting to use it, is because the dashboards are so intuitive, because we spent some time getting some shared views out so that it was a few clicks and they can see their data pretty instantly. And of course, you getting the data migration in, so they had all that historical piece. The change management of your project was really streamlined and very exciting.
Yeah, it was good.
And I got to see it, which was a lot of fun to see.
Yeah, and that's also probably a point worth making too. So a lot of things that I have worked with over my career are very much held tightly, and the vendor or the implementer will be like, tell us what you want, we'll do it. One of the things we've appreciated with Cora, and again, I think it's partially my background and my PM's background where we like to be hands-on, but there was no hesitation with that knowledge transfer, and it was very much a collaboration and a partnership from the beginning, which I think is also key to our success, because our community, we spent 12 months helping our project and program community collaborate and leverage each other and use the expertise around them, and then we were able to model that ourselves in rolling out the tool. So I think that has, although not directly related to the PPM tool itself, I think the process and the journey we've been on in the last 6 months is helping to build our collaborative community amongst our P3 community practice as well, because they're seeing us live the talk, and we're not just asking them to do something that we're not doing ourselves on the way through.
Yeah, and again, being as involved as I was in the project, it was a lot of fun for me to work together instead of hand me your notes and I'll figure. I was like, let's do this together, and it was a lot of fun for me as well. That you were as organized as you were and just ready for this tool. Like everyone was ready to have this PPM.
Exactly.
So it was a lot of fun to have a project team that was just boots on the ground. Let's get this done, which was great.
Yeah, exactly.
So given that these project teams have been using Cora for a while now, what are some of the benefits and results that you've noticed, and has it solved any of those original problems that you identified earlier?
Yeah. So one of the big benefits we've seen, although not quantifiable, we have been able to again demonstrate to our community that we're listening to them. So we actually position this very much as that we want to get out of your way and let you do your thing. So get in, use the tool, tell us what works and what doesn't, and where we're able to, we will tweak it, change things up, respond to your feedback. So that whole interactive collaboration piece has been hugely beneficial both to us, because we didn't have to set all the rules and guidelines straight up front. We got to leverage our community and actually give them a tool that they can use and want to use. From a purely selfish perspective, and the benefit I kind of alluded to before, inside the PMO itself. So when I arrived here this time last year, not just the sort of analyst community supporting the PPM tool, but my digital portfolio manager and principal analyst and I were spending the equivalent of about 8 full working days, and mostly done outside of hours because, it's not our core job, for one person, and then about another 4 working days for the second person to pull the key data together and prepare the portfolio reports and do the quality checks and pull together recommendations for governance. And that's a little bit soul destroying, because you just get through that and then you have a week and then you have to do it again. And it's also like so much time spent outside of hours just to get that information. If we had the ability to put extra people on and do that, we could, but I chose to make the investment in a better future and going for a better tool, rather than throwing the dollars at extra bodies to keep the BAU running. So we've just done our March cadence, which is our first real at scale cadence in the Cora capability, and we literally did it in 2 days, 2 working days. And that was 2 people inside of working hours, and then I think I had, because I was unwell, I did a little bit outside of hours because I was struggling. But in essence, that's more like what I would expect for a PMO oversighting an investment portfolio of our size. And it was just like, it literally blew us away. We sat down at the end of it and went, this doesn't feel right, because
What else
it feels
are
like
we
we've still got things we should be doing.
Yeah, so
we're actually heading into
if I could
governance today.
summarize, you make Cora work for you instead of you work for Cora.
Yep. And we're heading into our first governance meeting today, enabled 100% by the portal view reporting. We sent the link out last week with the pre-read, and we're making our first lot of investment decisions with reference to the data coming live out of Cora. We didn't have any decisions to make in February as part of the cadence, so that bought us a little bit more time, but we also had another tranche of PMs who had been looking over their colleagues' shoulder, and we're again beating our door down to get across in February. So that bought us enough time to get everybody across. Probably the other big benefit, I mentioned it before, was supporting our PPM tool and enabling our PMs to actually use it for basic, schedule management, timesheeting, reporting. But we actually had 3 resources just dedicated to that across a program portfolio of about 35 projects at peak last year. And I'm down to 1.5 this year for almost double the size of the portfolio. And that just purely is testament to the usability of the tool, but also our PM's ability to solve their own problems. Like my how do I? We've got the Cora support portal available. There's the in-context help, but it's an intuitive tool. And that was kind of sold to us, and we were a bit leery about that during the sort of product selection procurement process. But of all the things that were said during that process, that's the one that has been 100% proven by our community. They can find their way around, they can solve their own problems, they are talking to each other, and from a overhead management perspective, that is a huge selling point, because I am not having to support my community of program and project professionals. They know how to do their job. They need a tool that enables them to be the professionals that they are, and do their thing and just get these projects delivered and get the benefits unlocked for the university.
The concepts and methodologies that your project teams are using are no different than what's going on in Cora. It's just, again, that single source that's located in one spot. They don't have to do those same processes across multiple tools. So it's intuitive enough for them to do it all in one spot.
Yep, and they're not maintaining offline. So in our old environment, there was so many of them just like, I do this because you asked me to, but it makes no sense to me and nobody uses it. So when I want to run my project, I do it offline on my SharePoint site with all my, when we're seeing a lot of them, some of them are a bit reluctant to let that go until they prove the capability. But, we've had more than half of them have actually fessed up and said, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're using the tools the way they're intended to. So our community of practice is our forum where we hear that most often from our PMs and our community practice. Actually, later in the month, this month, we're actually workshopping some status reporting, how our PMs are using the Cora tool to do their governance reporting, and we'll adopt some standards based on what our community has developed themselves, which is fantastic.
I always call that the Cora Coalition.
Yes.
What's going well, what's not going well, because Cora is so configurable, you can modify so much in Cora to make it work specifically for what you need to get out of it. And so if you're putting good data into Cora, you're able to get that good data out, and the flexibility of the tool allows for that. So I'm so happy to hear that you're meeting with these teams to see what's going well and what's not.
Yeah, it's been good.
So what advice would you give another organization when they're undertaking a similar process?
I think the big one that for us is that before you start, actually know the product, not in the sense that you will then need to know it to the nth degree and be able to write detailed specifications and requirements, but understand the product and understand what you're trying to achieve as an organization. And I think aligned with that, get your technical reference group set up, particularly your super users and your power users and your change champions. Get them into that technical reference group and bring them on the journey with you. We as a management oversight type function have a perspective, but it's the people who are actually on the ground using the tools who will give you the gold. So I think an ability to have an environment, I mentioned a proof of concept before, but have that environment where you can get the people who you need to be the change champions and to give you the information in and get them a chance to know the product and how they might want to use it. The second one I think we've learnt is the initial config will change. So I'm a big believer in don't go in hard with the rules straight up. Go in with the big picture and the things that are important, and be prepared to get it wrong. Be prepared to adjust on the way through. Leverage your user community. There's a lot more. I'm the kind of person who I'd much rather say, this is what I think, have a go. Oh, that doesn't work? Sure, no worries, I got it wrong. Let's adjust on the way through.
Big fan of learning the hard way. I have this amazing idea, and it's so amazing, but I need to learn that it wasn't as amazing as I initially thought. Story of my life over here.
Yeah. And when you find, so how you think you might use the product, when you actually start using it, you might change the way you're doing it. And an example of that was the way we have used the financial component of Cora. So we went in thinking, best practice, and we would do this and this and this. And then when we actually started to do it, we hit some limitations that were not the product per se, but they were the university's core systems and processes just didn't enable us to get value from what we were trying to do. So we adjusted on the fly and found a different way to use the product that gets us, 85, 90% of the way there, but takes the overhead and the I won't say pointless because nothing about finance is pointless, but it took the lower value component out of the overhead that the PMs were being asked to do, and they appreciated the ability to have that sort of change on the fly. I'm also a big believer in being hands-on. If you my background will tell you that, but the best way to understand a product is learn to use it yourself. So for anybody who is planning an implementation or considering the Cora product, get in and understand it yourself. There's a lot to be said for slideware and reading material and listening to presentations and that sort of thing, but until you actually use it yourself, you don't understand the way it can work for you and your organization. So be hands-on, I think.
And the counterpart to that is, and I know this because I kicked off this project, and the second I kicked it off, you guys gave me 20 different PDFs of all your processes. So it's not only that you're willing to get in and get your feet wet in the product, it was that you came in knowing what your end-to-end processes were, and that enabled us to, both from the Cora and from the QUT side, work together to get to that end product that you currently have. So that was from me, just it was amazing and a breath of fresh air. And it would be advice that I give to any customer going out into the market. You should know your end-to-end processes so that you know what tool to actually buy.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in being hands-on around an implementation. The way we've approached it was to make sure we understood kind of that guiding light, or that North Star, some people call it. But if you understand what your outcome or output that you're looking for is, and you can understand why you made the decision you made, even if you got it wrong, you can draw that parallel back to, well, I thought that by heading for this North Star and I would get this outcome and I didn't, but at least I can justify why it didn't work. So, that's a personal style thing. A lot of people have their own versions of that, but for me, I like to use that as an approach.
Yep. And I think it worked very well with this project.
Yeah, I think so. And again, proof is in the pudding, yet to come. But what we're seeing already is encouraging. We have our first governance meeting today, enabled by I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but the first lot of decision making that we need to do around investment and investment management and proceeding projects through to their delivery gate is happening in about 2 hours' time. So that'll be cool.
I'm excited to hear how that ends up going for you. So how is the working relationship between Queensland University of Technology and Cora?
Yeah, so we've touched on it a couple of times, but I think our implementation approach has worked really well. I think we appreciated the collaborative engagement around that. That's been a sort of a characteristic of our environment here, has been that collaborative engagement, and particularly with the time zone challenges that we've had, that has worked really well. Obviously, we're down under in Australia, and yourself based there in the US, but we also have support teams in the UK and in Ireland, I think, as well. So challenge was something we were a little bit leery of. I've worked in multinationals before and I'm used to that, but QUT as an organisation has been very on-prem in terms of its digital until the last couple of years. So there was a little bit of nervousness, I think, around the adoption of some of the partnerships that are happening across the transformation program, and Cora is an example of that, where it's actually worked pretty well. And I would also suggest that where you have the option to do so, leverage the option of some on-site support. We actually had Pam on site with us for a period over Christmas, right at the pointy end when we started to pull our community across. And I think that visual show of support from the vendor was also the kind of the unspoken message to our community that helped build confidence. They knew that in those early days there was somebody actually sitting with us here on site who could help them during business hours, and we didn't actually run into very many challenges, I don't think, from memory. It just went fairly smoothly, and the preparation we did, I think, got us to that point.
Yeah, we did a lot of kind of change management and making the tool intuitive as possible. We did user acceptance testing before we went live. So yeah, I think my onsite, while I was there, it wasn't as supportive as we had initially intended, which gave us a head start to get onto the phase 2 implementation so that your users could see more value sooner. And so we really just hit the ground running with the phase 2 configurations and getting everything ready for that next launch so that they could keep seeing value and keep seeing the system grow and evolve to those needs. And that is also advice that I would give to other customers, is if it's possible to have somebody on site, because it is just really nice to have everyone dedicated to a project for 3 to 5 days and really focus, not have very many distractions going on to really just make sure like we're getting it right, that we're having the right conversations, that we're discussing everything as needed. And that was what was very helpful with me being on site, is I think phase 2 went fairly smooth because we were able to just sit in a room and get it done.
Yeah, that's true. The other one that occurred to me when I was preparing for this was the transition to support. So I think probably one of our, in hindsight, learnings, and it's not a negative because it came about because our community adopted so quickly. So we were not expecting to have the volume of BAU business in Cora as quickly as we had. And I think learning would be that we should have potentially picked that up faster. So we as a project team here at QUT should have picked up the fact that we had such a groundswell of people moving into Cora that we probably should have started that conversation with Cora about transitioning to a support arrangement earlier than our project plan had laid out. And the only challenge that presented for us was it kind of overloaded Pam and Paul, my implementation PM, when all the BAU stuff started to come through, questions and configurations and things in addition to the phase 2 project work that they were looking at. So there were a couple of weeks there where my whole team pivoted and we were hands-on while we nutted out the support arrangements and got that communicated to our community. So that's probably one sort of lesson or learning I would flag to people considering the Cora product. Be aware that your community will jump on board quickly and plan your support transition so that you can react and respond when that happens.
Yeah, and it's not a project without lessons learned. So
correct. Yep. Cora has a good repository for lessons learned. Hadn't told you this, but we overnight last night migrated all of our lessons from our whole life cycle of our PPM previously. So there's like 500 and something lessons we pulled across last night, just because we can then take advantage of the reporting and repository capability that Cora gives us.
Yep, so you can build new and better projects in Cora in the future with all those lessons learned. That's great.
Yeah, yep.
That's great. So one last question then. Would you recommend working with Cora to another organization that's in the market for a PPM tool?
Yeah, definitely. I think the keys to success, if you are looking at Cora, considering Cora as a product, I think, as Pam said before, know your as-is process. It is a tool that is set up to work with your organization and your business and deliver your outcomes. But if you can't articulate what your business needs or how your business operates, you may find it a little bit of a challenging process. So that's probably one caveat on it. Having said that, if you don't have that knowledge or don't have that capability, talk to the Cora team about that as well, because there is some ability to do a transformation as you move across, as with most projects and products. But I think the journey will be a little bit longer if you don't start from that knowledge, knowledge of your own business and what your outcome is that you're looking for. And absolutely, if you're looking for something that is low maintenance and easily usable and actually focused on the portfolio and investment capability, so there's capability inside Cora that helps you with what if scenario analysis around your portfolio and your investment. And there's not a lot of out of the box sort of the big name PPM tools that we had considered as part of our journey aren't particularly strong in that. And in a world where costs are important and investment transparency is important, Cora is a great tool that helps you support investment management and decision making and show benefits and return on investment in a way that your senior stakeholders will just love if they're anything like ours here at QT.
Yeah.
We're a university, but we're not particularly digitally literate yet. We're on a journey around that.
Yeah, and that's part of having Cora, is so that you can track that journey.
Yeah, exactly.
And organize it.
Yeah. So I think so. Our experience has been very positive, and I think it's a tool that is very well put together and actually understands the market that it supports and the capability that it supports.
Well, that was all that I had planned for our conversation today, but I want to thank you so much for doing this podcast and also for hosting me when I was on site at QUT, all the laughs that we've had, all the struggles that we've been through on the project. And, it's just been a really positive overall last 6 months while we've worked through our phase 1 and phase 2 implementation. And so I just want to thank you so much for all of the experiences that I've had along the journey with you. It's been so much fun. I've learned so much about Australia.
I'm sorry we couldn't manage the kangaroo hopping along in the background, but I should actually explain this big purple thing that's sitting over my shoulder in case anybody's wondering. So QUT has a couple of iconic share spaces, and one of them here at our Kelvin Grove campus is our sphere, and it's an LED sphere that generally has some kind of picture, or you can use it if you're doing a presentation, you can show videos on it or what have you. And so this was from our orientation week just recently here in Australia. We start our first of our big semesters in our autumn, which is where we are now here in the Southern Hemisphere. And it's a great open space. And I had intended to be there in person today, but unfortunately it was a little bit too noisy up there this morning for me to be there in person. So this is actually a representation of the human brain.
Gotcha.
It's random, but I liked the color. So,
No,
but yeah, thank you for working so collaboratively with us. I think a big part of the successful experience and journey we've had has been the way Cora has interacted and the way you've led with the implementation for us. So we do appreciate that a lot. And yes, we had a lot of fun when you were out here. So it was good that you're able to come out and spend a couple of weeks with us during our summer.
Yeah, it was amazing. And since you are in the Southern Hemisphere, I'll just end this by saying, due to time zones, since I'm in the Pac, and also since you are, using Cora to the fullest, I'm just going to have to say it. Your future looks bright.
Well, the sun's just coming up over here, so enjoy you yesterday. Yesterday was
Yes, we're
good
over
down
here
here.
in the past, and you're over there in the future using Cora, and let me tell you, it looks bright.
The future looks bright.
Well, thank you so much, Adele.
No worries. Have a good rest of your evening, Pam.
Thank you.